Because here's what I've noticed after years of conversations. Most people don't reject Christianity because they've carefully studied it through and found it lacking. Most people have a specific obstacle, something personal, something painful. Good production quality isn't the same as credibility, and a confident voice isn't the same as a trustworthy one. So we decided to do something a little different, to create a space where you can get real, honest answers to real questions about faith from people you can actually get to know over time. So no smoke and mirrors, no hype, just straight talk. And for our very first episode, I want to tackle a question that I think is more personal than it sounds. And this is it. What's keeping you from becoming a follower of Christ? After years of conversations, most people don't reject Christianity because they've carefully studied it through and found it lacking. Most people have a specific obstacle, something personal, something painful, something that just doesn't add up for them. And those obstacles deserve real answers. So our team put together the 6 most common obstacles to faith that we often hear. And let me say, none of these are designed to be conversation enders, but rather they're conversation starters. So I love walking through these things. So let's do this. Let's work through these things together. But before we do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for new content that we'll be posting regularly here. All right, so here's the first obstacle to following Christ. So many Christians are hypocrites. Now, I am not going to argue with you on that one. You're exactly right. Christians can be hypocrites, myself included, more times than I'd like to admit. But here's what I'd ask you to consider. What does hypocrisy actually tell us? It tells us the people failed to live up to their own values. Now, that's true of Christians, but it's true of everyone. So the question isn't whether Christians are perfect. Obviously, they're not. The question is whether Jesus is worth following despite his imperfect followers. And that's a different kind of question. So the church was never meant to be a showcase for people who have it all together. It's more like a hospital, a place for people who know they're broken and are trying to get better. So Jesus himself said that he came not for the healthy, but for the sick. In other words, those who realize their need. Well, what makes Christianity so compelling isn't the quality of its people, it's really the character of its founder. That's Jesus himself. Jesus is the one person in this story who is never a hypocrite. He loved people who rejected him. He forgave people who crucified him. He practiced everything he preached. In fact, Titus 3:5 says this, God saved us not because of the righteous things we had done, but because of his mercy. The whole system runs on grace, not performance. So the hypocrites, well, they're not an argument against Christianity. If anything, it's a proof that we need him. Here's the second obstacle to faith. This one is actually my story. I didn't go to church growing up. It just wasn't part of our family life. And for a long time, I think that made faith feel like something that belonged to other people. Like I missed on some window that closed in my childhood. But that's not how it works. See, God isn't bound by our upbringing. In fact, some of the most committed, thoughtful Christians I know came to faith as adults. And they tell you that it's actually an advantage because they chose it with open eyes. Now, for me, it was a couple of friends who invited me to church. No pressure, no agenda, just an invitation. And after about a month of going with them, something clicked. And for the first time, I understood what Jesus had actually done. That on the cross, he absorbed the punishment for every wrong I'd ever done. And that he offered that as a gift of forgiveness from my past. And when I received that, something changed in me. I didn't have a theological framework for it at the time. I just knew that I had this deep, unexpected peace. And it was only later I found the words in 2 Corinthians 5:17, where it says this, anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone. The new life has begun. See, you don't need to have been raised in the church. You just need a door, and you can walk through it from wherever you're standing right now. Here's the third obstacle to Christianity. I don't like organized religion. Okay, honestly, fair. Some of what's been done under the banner of organized religion throughout history has been horrible. Okay, horrible. And now I understand the hesitation, but I'd invite you to separate the institution from the idea. Okay, what Jesus actually started wasn't a hierarchy or a power structure. It was what I think of as a family business. Okay, he gathered a handful of apprentices, just ordinary people, invested deeply in them, and asked them to do the same for others. That's the model. Older disciples investing in newer ones, passing something real from person to person across the generations. The word that the New Testament uses most often for the church isn't organization, it's body. Okay, believers are the body of Christ. That's not an organization, that's an organism, something that's alive. And like any living thing, it gets messy, okay, right? It grows in unexpected ways, it gets sick sometimes, but it's also capable of genuine love, genuine community, and genuine transformation in ways that no institution can create. Listen, if you've been hurt by organized religion, I am so sorry. That's real. But don't let a bad experience with an institution keep you from a real encounter with a person at the center of it. Here's the fourth obstacle to following Christ. I might lose friends. Now, this one is real, and I don't want to minimize it. See, belonging is one of our deepest needs. When you change, in other words, when your values shift, when your priorities realign, sometimes your relationships change too. And that can genuinely hurt. But here's what I've found. Not every friendship is built to take you where you need to go. More than that, following Christ doesn't leave you disconnected from others. It integrates you into a community of people who are trying to love well, to live with purpose, and to look out for each other. The friends you gain often go deeper than the ones you may lose. See, God has a direction and a purpose for your life. So you want to find people who will help you discover that and live that out. Not people who need you to stay exactly as you were. Okay. Here's the fifth obstacle of faith. Bill, there's just too much evil in the world. Now, this is probably the most philosophically serious obstacle on the list, and it deserves a serious answer. The suffering in this world is real. It's not a theological puzzle. It's people's lives. Children, innocent people, unexplainable loss. If you look at that and struggle to believe in a good God, I don't think that's a failure of faith. I think that's actually a sign that your moral instincts are on the right track. But here's what I'd ask you to consider. Where did those moral instincts come from? Who created that moral framework? The feeling that something is wrong with the world actually implies a moral standard of how it should be. And that standard has to come from somewhere. The very outrage we feel at suffering is, in a crazy way, an argument for a moral order, not against it. The Christian story doesn't pretend the world is fine. It starts with the acknowledgement that something has gone deeply wrong. Yeah, that this isn't the way things are supposed to be. And the good news is that it offers not a philosophical explanation, but a rescue. A God who didn't stay at a safe distance from suffering, but entered into it. See, that is what Jesus did on the cross. So listen, darkness is real, but I've also seen too much of God's fingerprints in this world in unexpected moments of grace, in lives that shouldn't have turned around, but did. Here's the sixth obstacle to faith. God wouldn't excuse my past. You know, of all the obstacles on this list, this one might be the most common, but the least spoken out loud. It's that quiet voice that says, I've done too much. I've gone too far. The door might be open for other people, but probably not for me. Listen, I want to speak directly to that voice. It's lying to you. You see, the entire point of what Jesus did on the cross was precisely this, that there is nothing in your past that's too heavy to be forgiven, no record too long to be cleared. The cross isn't a reward for people who mostly got it right. It's a rescue for people who know they didn't. In fact, some of the most remarkable people in the Bible had pasts that should have disqualified them. In our minds, a murderer became the greatest leader in Israel's history. A man who denied knowing Jesus 3 times before he went to the cross became the rock on which Jesus would build his church. A religious zealot who hunted and killed Christians became the most prolific writer of the New Testament. So the question isn't whether your past is too much for God. The question really is whether you're willing to let him do something with it. So there we are, our top 6 obstacles to faith, and hopefully 6 responses that would help you take the next step. Now, none of these are meant to argue you into faith, but I hope they at least clear away some of the obstacles so you can see the path more clearly. And if any of this resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe, because it goes a long way to reaching the next person who might need it. And if you have a question we haven't addressed, drop it in the comments. Who knows? Your question might become our next episode. So thanks again for being here, and we'll see you next time. Blessings.